Have you ever stopped to think about how life actually works? I mean, way, way down at the microscopic level? Every living thing, from a tiny ant to you, is basically a bustling city of cells. And just like any city, there's traffic, a constant flow of stuff moving in and out. But what are the rules of the road? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the invisible laws that control the entire dance of life.
And our whole journey into this world, it all kicks off with a beautiful, elaborate, biological lie. So here's the puzzle. How in the world does a flower, something that's stuck in the ground and offers zero food, manage to trick a specific insect into flying over from far away to do its dirty work for it? The answer to that question reveals the first and maybe the most important rule of our cellular traffic system. Okay, so check this out. The fly orchid is a master of deception. It needs male digger wasps to pollinate it, but it's got no sweet nectar to offer. So instead, it resorts to some serious chemical trickery. It pumps out a scent that is an almost perfect copy of a female digger wasp's mating pheromone. These tiny scent molecules just drift off the flower, catching a ride on the breeze. Some poor, unsuspecting male wasp catches a whiff, his brain screams, "Mate!" and he flies over. Of course, when he tries to mate with the flower, he just gets covered in pollen. The really critical part of this whole story, for us, is how those scent molecules got from the flower to the wasp in the first place.
That invisible journey that the scent took, it has a name. It's called diffusion. And honestly, it's the most basic traffic law there is. It's the default setting for how pretty much everything moves around in the universe. Okay, that definition sounds a little textbooky, right? Let's break it down. Just imagine every single molecule is like a hyperactive little pinball, just bouncing around randomly all the time. Now, if you cram a ton of them into one tiny spot, all that random bouncing is going to naturally cause them to spread out into the empty space around them. That's it. That's diffusion. And that journey from the crowded spot to the not-so-crowded spot, that's what scientists call moving down a concentration gradient.
Need a less romantic example? Think about a rotten egg. At first, that awful smell, that's hydrogen sulfide gas, is packed in tight, right next to the egg. But those molecules can't sit still. They're bouncing and ricocheting off each other, spreading out until, they've invaded every single corner of the room. The smell moved from high concentration to low concentration until the entire room is equally gross. That, my friends, is diffusion in action.
All right, so that seems easy enough, right? Everything just spreads out until it's all even. But what about in a living thing? Our bodies are filled with barriers, specifically the membranes that wrap around every single one of our cells. What happens to the flow of traffic when you throw a wall in the middle of the road? Well, this is where things get interesting, because water gets special treatment. When there's a barrier in the way, water gets its own exclusive VIP express lane to get across. And this special rule for water has a special name: osmosis. So at its heart, osmosis is just diffusion, but it's specifically for water moving across a very selective barrier. This barrier is what we call partially permeable, meaning it's got tiny little holes in it. Water naturally flows from an area of high water potential, which is just a fancy way of saying a place with lots of free water molecules, to an area of lower water potential, where the water is crowded with other stuff, like salt or sugar. And that membrane is the real hero here. Think of it like a bouncer at a super exclusive club. It's picky. The small, slick water molecules, they can slip right past the velvet rope, no problem. But those bigger, clunkier molecules like sugar? Sorry, you're not on the list. You're stuck outside. And what does this mean for a real cell? The consequences are huge. If you take an animal cell, like one of your red blood cells, and drop it in pure water, water rushes in so fast that the cell swells up and literally explodes. A plant cell, though, it just gets nice and firm or turgid. Why the difference? Because it has a tough cell wall that acts like a corset, holding everything in. Now, flip it. In super salty water, water rushes out of the cell, and they both shrivel up like raisins. Not a good day for the cell either way. Okay, so diffusion and osmosis explain the natural flow of things, right? Everything wants to go downhill, from crowded to empty. But life isn't always about going with the flow. What if a cell needs to hoard something? What if it needs to pull something inside, even though there's already way more of it inside than outside? How do you push something against the current? Well, to go against the flow, cells have to cheat. They have to break the rules of diffusion. And to do that, they have to spend energy. This whole process is called active transport.
And this is where the cell has to stop being lazy and actually put in some serious work. The most important thing to remember here is that active transport moves stuff against the concentration gradient. It's the biological version of trying to push a giant boulder uphill. It doesn't happen on its own, it's really hard work, and it needs fuel. That fuel comes from respiration. And it's not a small amount of energy either. Get this, your nerve cells spend something like 2/3 of all their energy just on active transport. It's a huge energy hog. And you can see this happening all over nature. Take a look at this simple plant living in a pond. See the amount of potassium ions inside its cells compared to the water outside? It's hoarding 8 times more potassium inside. If it was just up to diffusion, all that precious potassium would leak right out. The only way it can hang on to it is by constantly, actively pumping it in, fighting that natural flow 24/7. So how does it actually do this? Well, built into the cell membrane are these incredible little machines called transport proteins. You can think of them like tiny molecular pumps or maybe a revolving door. A molecule, say glucose, fits into the protein on the outside. Then the cell zaps it with a burst of energy. That energy forces the protein to change its shape, and it spins around and spits the glucose molecule out on the inside, shoving it into the already crowded room. All right, let's step back for a second. We've just covered the 3 big fundamental rules that control all the traffic in and out of every cell that makes up every living thing. Let's put it all together. So, you've got 3 rules. Rule number 1 is diffusion. That's the lazy river. Molecules just spread out naturally, no energy needed. Rule number 2 is osmosis. That's the water-only express lane. It lets water move across a barrier to balance things out. And finally, you have rule number 3, active transport. That's the toll road. If a cell wants to force molecules to go against the natural flow, it has to pay a steep price in energy. So, from an orchid tricking a wasp with a phantom perfume, all the way to your own body right now absorbing the nutrients from your last meal, these 3 traffic laws are always at work. They are the silent, invisible engine that drives biology. The next time you take a drink of water, just think about the incredible microscopic drama that's about to kick off inside you. The osmosis, the active transport, all of it. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible forces are shaping your world at this very second?